The morning of July 18th, 1944, began with a strange kind of silence near the village of Cagny, southeast of Caen in Normandy. The sky was still hazy from thousands of Allied bombers that had passed overhead only hours earlier. Dust hung over the fields. Broken hedgerows cast long shadows across the wheat. Engines rumbled in the distance, deep and uneven, like thunder rolling under the earth.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
Inside a British Sherman Firefly, 4 men sat in the cramped steel hull, listening to every sound. Their commander pressed his binoculars to his eyes and saw it at the far edge of the field. A low shape, go-up, long gun barrel, sloped armor, a Panther. For a moment, nobody moved. The Firefly had one great advantage. Its powerful 17-pounder anti-tank gun was one of the few Allied weapons in Normandy capable of destroying a Panther from a safe distance. British crews trusted it. German crews feared it. But trust and fear meant little in the first seconds of contact. The gun still had to hit, and this morning the first shot would miss. You can almost feel the tension inside that turret. The loader holds a long, armor-piercing round in both hands. The gunner squints through his telescopic sight. The commander calculates the range, the angle, the movement of the enemy. Outside, the Panther is turning, scanning the same field, hunting for targets. Both crews know what is at stake. Whoever fires accurately first will probably live. Whoever hesitates may burn alive. The Firefly fires. The blast fills the turret with smoke and pressure. The tank rocks backward. The shell streaks across the field and kicks up dirt just to the right of the Panther. A miss. And before the British crew can even process what happened, the Panther fires back. The German shell arrives almost instantly. That is where our story begins. By the summer of 1944, the battle for Normandy had become a brutal contest of endurance and skill. Allied forces had landed on June 6th and fought their way inland through some of the most difficult terrain in Europe. The hedgerows of Normandy, known as bocage, divided every field with thick banks of earth and dense vegetation. Visibility was limited. Tanks could be hidden until they were dangerously close. Every lane and every field could become an ambush. For tank crews, it was a nightmare. The British 11th Armored Division and Guards Armored Division pushed steadily toward Caen, facing experienced German Panzer units. Among the most dangerous of these was the 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, and elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend. Supporting them were regular Wehrmacht units equipped with Panther tanks, one of Germany's most formidable armored vehicles. The Panther, officially designated the Panzerkampfwagen 5 Panther, had entered combat in 1943. It combined thick-sloped frontal armor with the powerful 75mm KWK-42L/70 gun. This gun fired high-velocity armor-piercing rounds capable of penetrating most Allied tanks at over 1,500 meters. The Panther's frontal armor, especially the glacis plate, was extremely difficult to defeat. But the Panther was not invincible. The British answer was the Sherman Firefly. At first glance, the Firefly looked like a standard American-built M4 Sherman. But inside the turret, almost everything had changed. British engineers had modified the tank to carry the ordnance quick-firing 17-pounder, a 76.2mm gun with tremendous anti-tank performance. To fit the larger weapon, they redesigned the radio layout and altered the turret interior. The result was awkward but deadly. When loaded with APC-BC ammunition, the 17-pounder could penetrate the Panther's frontal turret armor and, under favorable conditions, even defeat parts of its frontal hull. With a PDS ammunition, penetration increased even more, though accuracy could be inconsistent. In theory, the Firefly gave Allied crews a fighting chance. In practice, every engagement still came down to training, nerves, and seconds. The crew of a Sherman Firefly usually consisted of 5 men. The driver sat in the front left of the hull. The co-driver and hull machine gunner sat to his right. In the turret were the commander, gunner, and loader. Each man had a specific role, and survival depended on flawless teamwork. The commander observed the battlefield and selected targets. The gunner aimed and fired. The loader inserted the large 17-pounder rounds as quickly as possible. The driver positioned the tank and sought cover. The co-driver watched for threats and manned the bow machine gun. The Panther crew worked in a similar way. German training emphasized precision gunnery and rapid target engagement. Veteran crews were especially dangerous. They were disciplined, calm, and accustomed to killing enemy tanks with a single shot. On July 18th, during Operation Goodwood, British armored units advanced east of Caen across open ground. And this was one of the largest tank offensives undertaken by British forces during the war. More than 1,000 tanks moved forward after a massive aerial bombardment intended to weaken German defenses. But many German anti-tank positions and armored units survived. As British tanks crossed the open fields, Panthers and Tigers hidden near villages like Cagny and Bourgabous began firing. It was in this deadly landscape that countless duels took place between Sherman Fireflies and Panthers. One such duel can be reconstructed from battlefield reports, crew accounts, and the known conditions of the fighting. At approximately 8:40 a.m., a troop of Sherman tanks from the 2nd Northamptonshire Yeomanry advanced along a shallow rise near Cagny. Dust reduced visibility. Burning vehicles marked the route. The troop commander, a lieutenant in a Firefly, scanned through his binoculars while the other Shermans spread out behind him. Then he saw movement at the edge of a tree line. A Panther. The German tank was partially concealed behind a hedgerow. Its turret angled slightly left. It had likely survived the bombing and was waiting for exactly this moment. The British commander gave a quick range estimate, about 900 yards. The gunner adjusted the sight. The loader slammed an armor-piercing round into the breech. The commander issued the order to fire. The 17-pounder thundered. Inside the Firefly, the recoil was violent. Smoke filled the turret. Brass clattered to the floor. The commander looked through his binoculars and felt his stomach tighten. The shell had missed. Perhaps the range was slightly wrong. Perhaps the tank moved as the gun fired. And perhaps the gunner aimed a fraction too far to the right. In battle, tiny errors could mean everything. The Panther reacted instantly. German crews were trained to identify Fireflies first because of their longer gun barrels and the danger they posed. Even if this crew had not recognized the tank as a Firefly, the muzzle flash had revealed its position. The Panther's turret swung. The long 75mm gun settled on target. The German gunner fired. The shell crossed the field in less than a second. The British crew heard a sharp metallic crash as the round struck the ground just in front of their tank, spraying dirt and fragments across the hull. The driver instinctively reversed. The commander shouted for another round. The loader wrestled a second 17-pounder shell into the breech. The ammunition was long and heavy, and the turret offered little room to move. Every second felt painfully slow. The Panther was already correcting its aim. The British gunner steadied his breathing. He kept the sight centered on the enemy turret. Fire. The second British shot flew true. The armor-piercing shell struck the Panther near the gun mantlet with a flash of sparks. For a split second, nothing happened. Then smoke poured from the turret roof. The Panther's gun dipped. Its turret stopped moving. The crew inside had been hit hard. The Firefly crew waited, hearts pounding, expecting another shot. None came. Within moments, flames began licking from the hatches. The duel was over. But the story behind that exchange reveals far more than one lucky hit after one dangerous miss. The Panther was a remarkable machine, but it had weaknesses. Its side armor was much thinner than its front, and its ammunition storage could ignite if penetrated. Mechanical reliability, while improved by 1944, remained a concern. Final drives and engines were stressed by the vehicle's weight and high performance requirements. The Sherman Firefly also had flaws. The long 17-pounder barrel made the tank conspicuous. The powerful muzzle blast kicked up dust and exposed firing positions. The turret was cramped, and the large rounds slowed loading compared with the standard 75mm Sherman. Fireflies were also relatively few in number, often one per troop. Because of this, German tank crews deliberately hunted them. British units developed countermeasures. Firefly gunners sometimes painted the forward section of the barrel to appear shorter. Its commanders positioned Fireflies slightly behind ordinary Shermans to conceal their presence until the decisive moment. These tactical adaptations saved lives. The human factor was even more important. A gun capable of penetrating enemy armor was useless if the crew panicked. Tank combat placed enormous psychological strain on soldiers. The interior of a tank was noisy, hot, and claustrophobic. Visibility was limited to narrow vision devices and periscopes. Communications were often reduced to brief, shouted commands over the roar of the engine. When a tank was hit, the result could be catastrophic. Armor fragments called spall ricocheted through the crew compartment. Fuel and ammunition could ignite. Escape might take only seconds. Every crewman understood these risks, yet they fought anyway. The commander in our story likely appeared calm, but his mind was working furiously. He estimated range, considered cover, watched for supporting enemy vehicles, and coordinated his crew under extreme pressure. The gunner had to ignore fear and focus on precise sight alignment. The loader had to move quickly despite smoke, recoil, and the possibility that the next enemy round would arrive before he finished. The driver waited for orders while prepared to reverse or pivot instantly. Each man depended completely on the others. This was true on both sides. Inside the Panther, the German commander and gunner responded with remarkable speed after the first British miss. Their rapid return fire reflected experience and discipline. Had their shell landed only a little higher, it might have penetrated the Firefly's thinner frontal armor and killed the British crew before they could reload. That narrow margin is what made tank warfare so unforgiving. Operation Goodwood demonstrated both the strengths and limitations of armored warfare. British forces achieved some advances, but suffered heavy losses from concealed anti-tank guns and German armor. Hundreds of tanks were damaged or destroyed. Yet the offensive also pinned major German forces and contributed to the broader Allied campaign in Normandy. Fireflies played a crucial role throughout these battles. One of the most famous Firefly commanders was Joe Ekins of the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry. On August 8, 1944, during fighting near Saint-Aignan-de-Craménil, Ekins is widely credited with knocking out several German tanks, and including the Tiger one carrying Michael Wittmann, one of Germany's most celebrated panzer aces. Whether or not every detail of that action is certain, the event underscored the Firefly's ability to destroy even the most feared German tanks. For many German crews, the appearance of a Firefly changed the tactical situation immediately. They could no longer rely on frontal invulnerability. This shift had strategic consequences. By 1944, Allied industrial power ensured that tanks and trained crews would continue arriving in France. Every Panther lost was increasingly difficult for Germany to replace. Every experienced crewman killed represented years of training and battlefield experience gone forever. The duel near Cagny was therefore part of a much larger story. It was a contest between two machines, but also between two industrial systems. Two armies and two exhausted groups of young men trapped inside steel boxes. The Firefly crew probably remained in position only briefly after destroying the Panther. Battlefield doctrine emphasized movement after firing to avoid return fire from unseen enemies. Another Panther, an anti-tank gun or artillery observer, might already have marked their location. The driver reversed behind a hedgerow. The loader reached for another round. The commander scanned for the next threat. There was always another threat. Across Normandy, tank crews fought under conditions of constant uncertainty. Dust obscured vision. Radio reports were incomplete. Friendly and enemy tanks appeared suddenly at close range. A field that seemed empty could erupt with gunfire in seconds. The physical sensations were unforgettable. The smell of oil and cordite, the ringing in the ears after firing, the vibration of the engine beneath the floor plates, the metallic clang of spent cases, the oppressive heat of summer trapped inside armor. And above all, the knowledge that one accurate enemy shell could end everything. Veterans often describe time slowing during engagements. Decisions that lasted only seconds seemed stretched into long, vivid moments. A missed first shot felt like a personal failure. The interval before reloading felt endless. The result of the second shot seemed to take forever to reveal itself. That emotional rhythm is what made tank duels so intense. Miss, incoming fire, reload, aim, fire again, live or die. The Sherman Firefly's contribution extended beyond Normandy. British and Commonwealth units used the tank in northwest Europe through the end of the war. Fireflies supported operations in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. Their presence gave Allied armored formations a credible answer to Panthers and Tigers, until newer vehicles entered service in greater numbers. The Panther also left a lasting legacy. Its sloped armor and powerful gun influenced post-war tank design around the world. Many historians consider it one of the best balanced tanks of the war, combining protection, firepower, and mobility in a highly effective package when mechanically sound. But on the battlefield, technical excellence never guaranteed survival. The best tank in the world could be lost because of one mistaken range estimate, one exposed flank, one jammed turret, or one enemy crew that reloaded slightly faster. That is what happened in our story. The British crew missed first. Yet the German crew answered immediately. The British crew fired again and struck home. A matter of seconds determined the fate of 10 men. If you were standing in that Normandy field after the duel, the scene would be haunting. Dust drifting in the air, the smell of burned propellant, a panther smoldering near the hedgerow, British tanks moving cautiously to new positions, stretcher bearers somewhere in the distance, radios crackling with urgent reports. The battle itself would continue, but for those two crews, everything had changed. For the survivors inside the Firefly, relief would mix with shock. Hands might tremble, voices might sound strangely calm. There would be no time to celebrate. Ammunition had to be checked. The gun had to be ready. The next enemy tank might appear at any moment for the Panther crew, and the outcome was often tragic. Penetration in the turret could kill or wound several men instantly. Fire and smoke turned escape into a desperate race against seconds. Tank warfare was deeply personal despite the scale of the machines involved. Each vehicle was a small community. Crews ate together, repaired their tank together, and trusted one another with their lives. Losing a tank often meant losing close friends. This human bond is why stories like this still resonate. They are not just about armor thickness and gun penetration tables. They are about ordinary men under extraordinary pressure. The British gunner who missed the first shot was not a machine. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. He knew the consequences of failure. Yet he regained his focus and fired again. The German gunner who returned fire did exactly what years of training had taught him. He responded quickly and nearly won the duel. Neither side lacked courage. They were professionals doing their jobs in one of the most dangerous environments of the war. When historians study armored combat, they often compare technical specifications. The Panther had superior frontal protection and excellent optics. The Firefly had a gun capable of defeating that armor. These facts are important, but they do not capture the full reality. The true contest occurred in seconds of observation, judgment, and execution. Who spotted the enemy first? Who identified the target correctly? Who estimated range more accurately? Who stayed calm after a miss? Who reloaded faster? Who fired the decisive shot? In this case, the answer favored the Sherman Firefly. And the missed first round did not decide the battle. The crew's ability to recover did. That lesson extends beyond armored warfare. Mistakes are inevitable, especially under pressure. What matters is how quickly and effectively people respond after the mistake. The Firefly crew did not freeze. They corrected, they fired again, and they survived. As the sun climbed higher over Normandy, the fighting around Cagny intensified. More British tanks advanced. More German guns opened fire. Smoke columns rose across the countryside. The outcome of the campaign would be determined not by one duel, but by thousands of moments like this, scattered across fields and villages. Yet individual encounters reveal the war in its clearest form. One field, 2 tanks, 10 men, 1 missed shot, 1 fast reply, 1 second chance. Today, restored Sherman Fireflies and Panthers stand in museums, silent and motionless. Visitors can study the thick armor, the long gun barrels, and the cramped interiors. But it takes imagination to understand what those machines once meant. Imagine the July heat inside a steel turret. Imagine the shock of recoil. Imagine seeing your first shell miss. Imagine knowing the enemy is already aiming back. And imagine finding the calm to fire again. That is the story of the Sherman Firefly in Normandy. Not invincible, not flawless, but deadly in trained hands. The Panther was faster to answer than many crews could hope to be. Its gun was powerful, its armor formidable, and its veterans highly skilled. Yet even the most feared tank on the battlefield could be defeated by determination, teamwork, and one well-placed shell. Yet the British crew who survived that exchange likely remembered it for the rest of their lives. The miss, the incoming round, the frantic reload, the impact, the smoke rising from the enemy tank. A few seconds, a lifetime of memory. And in those few seconds, the entire brutal reality of armored warfare in Normandy was compressed into one unforgettable duel.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.